Hello, welcome to Talking with Famous People. I'm the host of Talking Famous People, host Zachary. I'm here in Salt Lake City, Utah, with famous person Felix, and we just watched the video where Felix, Delilah, and Eric kind of clashed on the transgender issue. And in one part of it, or near the beginning, he said, or Felix said something like,
I dislike the.
he said monolithic societies. He dislikes monolithic societies because they destroy culture.
Yeah.
Or was destroy identity or diversity. That's what he said. Diversity.
My statement was I dislike portraying any specific group within a society as a monolithic entity because it's inherently detrimental to the idea of diversity and cultural acceptance. Because if we truly believe that one size fits all when it comes to demographics based on race, sex, religion, gender, whatever it may be, we take away from the inherent diversity present within that community. It's like saying if all Mexican people like beans and rice, that is terrible for the culture because there are individuals who have intolerances to starch and they're Mexican, so they literally can't eat rice. There's individual it doesn't simply apply to race; it applies to everything. Like if we take the issue to gender identity and like masculinity and femininity, if we portray the feminine body as a monolithic entity that's only there to satisfy and satiate the masculine body, that's why we have individuals on Facebook saying, "Damn girls, why y'all out there showing so much skin? Your body's a temple." Like one, the feminine body isn't there to fulfill the wishes of the masculine body. So, like, where is my point of justification to say what you're doing is incorrect? This is the proper way.
Where are you linking?
Like, if we allow the idea that there's catch-alls for societies, then we apply these catch-alls to every individual, which detracts from the diversity found within lots of individuals. Like, you're from Kentucky, correct?
Mhm.
If I were to listen to the generalization that the Kentucky's like a Bible bumping place, I would react differently to you, and I don't like that idea. I think that I should give people the benefit of the doubt of at least talking to them before pigeonholing them into some kind of
Is there something wrong being a Bible thumper?
I don't like the idea of propagating that your culture is the correct one. Like, I'm cool with saying this is my belief, and if you want to come in, go for it. But like when I think of the word Bible bumper, I don't think or Bible thumper, whatever the word is, I don't think of it as
Bible bumper.
Yeah, as just like a peaceful interaction anymore. Like bumper, like it makes me feel like I have a position already, and you are trying to forcibly move me from either my position to your position, or make me understand that the difference between us will always leave me in a detrimental space. Like it could be science too. Like if I constantly poke at people's religious beliefs with any form of scientific proposal, like I am not a good person. I'm sitting here actively trying to destroy another person's interpretation of reality, like with no benefit.
What if their interpretation of reality leads to destructive things?
If those destructive things affect me, then I would try to get them to get away from me, or try to get away from them. If those destructive things,
you think the society has an obligation to minimize
harm?
The amount of, well, the thing is, like, obviously, the society should minimize harm. If something if there is a behavior that's causing direct harm to the individuals in the society, I think everyone generally agrees that it should be minimized, right? But I think where it gets tricky is where, when is the threshold reached to where you can draw the line on where ideology supports behavior?
Therein lies the question. Like, there is no bright line for that, as far as I know. Like, that's why I personally believe in like not allowing monolithic entities, because what's the bright, like, when does this monolithic entity that I'm portraying this group of people as accurately represent them? How many stereotypes do I have to gather together before I can put you in this categorization and you can't find a way out of it? And I don't think that's okay, because it takes the power away from the individual to determine their own identity. Like, for example, Um, I am often called a coconut, brown on the outside, white on the inside. Um, I'm never Mexican enough for Mexicans, and I'm never American enough for Americans. And the sad fact is that I have to be more Mexican than Mexicans and more American than Americans just to be taken
See, I have the
seriously.
opposite. I have the opposite experience. People in Kentucky refer to me as white chocolate because on the inside I'm black. You know.
Interesting. See, like that's the kind of thing that portraying people as like all the same eradicates. If I truly believe that all white people are only white, my white chocolate friend here would never be able to fit within my view of the world. He would never be white or black, and he would be left as this undefined, ambiguous other, which I am free to justify any form of violence against because they are not what I believe to be a human, and that's really, really shitty. Like that, it happens a lot.
um, so let's expand on the monolithic idea.
Mhm.
You say that viewing groups of individuals in a society as a monolithic entity
Mhm.
is hurtful to it. What about viewing a nation as a monolithic entity? You think that is just as hurtful?
Honestly, I would think so because like portraying a nation as a monolithic entity is the same reason why nobody understands that the majority of Germans in 1930s Germany weren't pro-Nazi regime. I forget who said it, but one of the first like acts of like when they came for Catholics, I did nothing. When they came for homosexuals, I did nothing. When they came for me, no one did anything. And that's what happens. Like we erase that story. If we believe that 1940s Germany, 1930s Germany was a bunch of hateful bigots, then we erase the story of the individuals who struggled to not only escape that country but to fight and try to resist the insurgency which ended up taking them over. Like
So do you think that monolithic societies or having like a monolithic culture, do you think it inherently leads to something like fascism?
I wouldn't say it leads to fascism because it could like if the monolithics is democracy and everybody's like, oh, we should listen to each other, then it end up as a direct democracy in which everybody's apologizing for their point of view every single day and nobody ever does anything. But like my personal belief on monolithic entities is they're specific to an abstract group of people, whether that be nations of citizens of a nation, members of a community, or particular ideologies, and to try to create a categorization which lumps everybody with a specific, I don't know, prerequisite into the same group creates a world in which if you would fulfill a lot of those prerequisites, but you are outside of that category, you have nowhere to be. It robs you of your identity and forces you to like because of monolithics, I have to act differently depending on where I am and more than just like fulfilling the roles which I act differently when I'm with friends than I am in the professional atmosphere inherently because completely different roles. However, like if I'm in a professional atmosphere in both instances, but in one instance it's Mexicans and one instance it's pure Americans, I have to completely change my identity or at least completely interact differently in order to be taken seriously. If I try to speak my political ideologies around my family members and I don't speak it in Spanish, and link it to Spanish ideologies, historical events in Mexico and in other Latin American countries, they don't give any of my opinions credence. And if I were to do that here, like if I were to talk about the United States and use my like historical accounts of Mexico or other countries to draw parallels, I would immediately be met with the same discredit, especially if I were to do it in Spanish, because it's not I'm not that identity.
Do you think you can escape your nationality?
Depends. I think I can escape my nationality in the sense that most people don't know whether I'm Mexican, Colombian, Salvadorian, Guatemalan. So I think I could escape it in that sense. But as for like escaping, like I guess the farthest I've ever gotten away from it was this weird like, oh, so are you like Samoan and black? And I was like, I don't think I have any of those features, but no, I'm not. And like I personally don't think I can escape it as long as society has certain predispositions when like as long as society still has these categories, I don't think I can ever escape my nationality. I will always be trying to be something that I'm not.
So, can you define communitarianism for me? What constitutes communitarianism?
For me, communitarianism is the idea that regardless of the situation, it is not only ourselves which we must take into account, but the community with which we live. Um, like I can build my house as big as I can, but if me building my house to a certain degree means that individuals within my community have no land on which to build, I feel that I am doing a severe discredit, if not outright harming my community, and I should not be able to do that. I think communitarianism is the idea that everybody is a free and independent human being, but we don't live as free, independent human beings the vast majority of the time. We live
Would you
as
say we have social obligations?
yeah, a lot of us do. Not everybody, but a lot of
Does
us
that
do.
extend to everything from an individual? So, from if we look at like the you have a right to your own self property, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can draw from that's where a lot of the ideas in like a capitalist society where if you have your own business, then that business is an
Mm-hmm.
entity that's linked to you.
Mm-hmm.
So should the social obligations extend to everything that extends from individual into society, including like businesses and stuff like that?
See, like here I fall into my own trap. Like if I don't like the idea of monolithic entities, that means I inherently cannot be okay with monolithic legal structures. Like I can't be okay with a law that treats everybody the same because everybody is not the same. We all have unique experiences and ideologies and ideas which affect us in significant manners. And I feel that if we abide by monolithic ideas, then we erase this form of diversity. Like it goes much farther than just like when I began, I started talking about like race and gender and sex and political ideology, but it goes much deeper. Like monolithic seeks to categorize everything. And while I don't think that categorization is bad, I think that forced categorization is like the
Well,
inability
here's
for
here's an argument I think for the monolithic society regarding communitarianism. I would think that in a communitarianist society where all the individuals have social obligation toward each other, um, I think that the best way to achieve that is to unite people. Under a monolithic society, diversity isn't regarded as an important influence, whether it be cultural, like religious, whatever.
Mhm.
So the lack of diversity would the individual society would have a stronger sense of self. Do you think that could lead way to more communitarian behavior?
Yeah, and one of the things that scares me about that specific argument is in essence my perfect society would be a hive mind, and that's just as detrimental to otherness and
What do you
diversity.
mean by hive mind? Like a
Every,
single like ideology?
yeah, like everybody agrees that I should not hurt another person. And while that's generally agreeable, like I don't think that forced ideologies is a good thing. Like what is biological life without living? And living, I believe, is conflict. Like there has to be some conflict at least sometimes, otherwise life isn't really life. Um, but like as far as like I do really think that communitarian societies could do well. However, I think that my irrational attachment to communities and to diversity and to humanity might preempt the existence of a communitarian community. Because if it's true that, like with the business question, a communitarian community would say that you can't charge what you want if it inflicts harm on another member of society. That's society taking justification for forcing you into a specific position, and that's I don't think that's okay. Like one of the instances in which I think is personally wrong for the United States federal government to take, however, is incredibly unpopular, is the idea of forcing bakeries to make cakes for same-sex couples. Because if we apply that law universally, that means that a Jewish baker might be forced to create a Nazi cake. and that I do believe is bad. That's why like I don't like the idea of monolithic laws, and that's hard to accommodate because that would mean every single judicial case would require its own specific hearings, and that would be illogical because there's just so many of us. Like there's 7 billion as far as I know right now, give or take a couple 100 million, and to have to deal with all of us on an individual scale every single day might get tiring, and that's a part of the communitarian ideal, and that's
How important do you think a state government is in developing a communitarian society? Do you think an expansive state is required, or do you think it can be achieved
yeah.
without?
I honestly think that a communitarian society would only be able to function with a centralized authority, because there are individuals who believe that charity is not charity, charity is coercion. I shouldn't have to make sure that individuals within my
For an error?
no, just everybody that believes that the individual should not have a commitment to their fellow individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that it's okay to live in a world where like good Samaritan laws don't exist. Like, if it doesn't force anything upon you other than move that baby's face out of the puddle, I think you should be legally obligated to move that baby's face out of the puddle, regardless if you care if that baby lives or dies or hate the baby for some weird reason.
What if that baby grows up to be a serial killer? He's damaged for life because he was drowning, and now he goes on and he fucking murders like 10 people.
Then in that instance,
That's a bad argument.
No.
That's like a low blow because that's like completely hypothetical, right?
I know,
It's
but
like,
that see
there's
like
no
that,
way you can know that.
that's exactly the problem with the communitarian ideology. If we can't predict effectively what would occur on the individual level, that means we can never take action to prevent the like risk aversion, I guess. If we can never allow the individual to experiment without concern for at least his own house, because like it used to be a law in like way back before electricity and fire departments that if there was a fire in your city or village, I guess because of the time period, if you didn't actively try to stop the fire, you would be executed because the fire was not only a threat to your home, but a threat to the homes of everybody in the village because everything was fucking hay and wood. Like, if we do that, that means that I can't start fires. Now, fires happen to be a prerequisite for shit like hot food and like thermodynamics, like at least as far as like chemistry and like all that shit goes. Like, usually you need some form of like heat generation to like purify a chemical or something. And in that instance, a communitarian would say your scientific experiment poses a potential good to the community via, I don't know, creating a blood clotting agent. And like that's important. However, the attempt to get to that blood clotting agent poses a significant risk to the community, and as a result, the community must step in and say, "No, you cannot do this." Thus, I don't know how I can affirm communitarianism while also in that instance not affirming it, and it's because of my
It's like I think that I know Aristotle wouldn't consider himself a communitarian, but I think that he has sort of ideas that extend to communitarianism. So if you look at like a natural state, like men and women are drawn to each other. It's just like we have that biological inclination, and from there that's where families start. And if you go down the chain, I don't need to elaborate the whole thing. It eventually leads to a small community, and it seems like the best way. It seems like in the beginning, morality in communities is democratic. It's whatever because like say there's like 10 people in a community. Like they're all going to get together probably and decide. I know this is sort of like social contract. Here we go with.
yeah, I'm good.
They're all going to kind of decide on general values, like what we think is, or at least until one of them finds a machine gun out in the dirt, out in the forest. 10,000 BC finds like something went wrong with the dimension.
The spear, just having more weaponry. I get you.
Yeah, and then he fucking kills people because they don't accept ideology. But no, but I think that I think morality in the beginning starts democratically, or at least on a consensus level. And I think that, or my understanding of how morality come to be, or at least codified morality, is that we individuals had this like innate sense of like, I don't know why, but I feel it's wrong to like stab my wife or this female I've mated with to death.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I feel I feel this like intuitive thing where I don't want to stomp my baby to death.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think like in once those laws are codified, then or those inclinations, I think that's what led to the sort of
Monolithic law.
yeah, the sort of codified form of ethics where, and I think that ties back in people, it comes to like what is the core base of that? Why is it that I don't want to stomp my baby in the ground? Is it? I think like Kant would argue. I could be wrong, but I think Kant would argue that we have that imperative duty to, and because it's a duty that implies it was given to us by something, then he would lead that back to like God.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much about where the inclinations come from because I really don't know. But if I had to guess, I would assume it's like biological, something like evolutionary. Um, but I think that's what like the best way for things for morality to come within society. It starts democratically, then it becomes codified. The problem comes when multiple societies uh, that have those small unions kind of come together. That's when like the conflict begins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think from there it extends out to sort of the whole problem with like multiculturalism in general, where it's there has to be like relative vectors that societies or the cultures can share, or there's a lot of tension. That's why it's I question, is it better to have a system in place that allows freedom of expression, but there's like a general rule of. I think this is why Eric thinks that the most consistent one is the individual rights framework, or the negative rights framework. That don't compromise on another person's body. That way, you still have the expression of ideology. But I feel like one of my problems with that, and Eric could probably address it when he watches this video. He'd probably respond to it. But I feel that if we have a society like that, like a complete society like that, where the government's minimized and it's just like local communities, the power is completely decentralized. What happens when like one person starts gaining power or influence, and a lot of other people agree with them or they back them, and then he has strong coercion over other individuals in society, and he can just sort of divide and conquer, so to speak.
If you don't mind, like what you're describing, like a community that was essentially like city based, at least at a very large scale level, like a small city state, kind of like a bigger Athens, I guess. Germany and the Weimar Republic and Japan and lots of other countries post one of their major wars. Right now, I guess I want to focus specifically on Germany and Weimar Republic. When they were in an instance of a lack of a centralized authority that had any real power to impose a form of political structure, combined with lots of individuals seeking political freedom at the individual scale, it ended up becoming one group that had guns and was willing to use them versus an already essentially powerless group, since they had no central authority to which they could plead for help.
Yeah, that's my fear. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's a scary ass day to live in, where individual rights are so important to us that we completely eradicate any outside authority. Like I guess a similar function that I feel that a communitarian government would fulfill would be like a judiciary role only. And what I mean by that is like, how can I phrase this? They should not step in for anything other than being a fair and impartial mediator. Like I don't think that as individuals, like let's say you and I own two businesses and we have the complete freedom to run our businesses as we choose, as long as I don't infringe upon you and you don't infringe upon me. I could start undercutting you, or you could start undercutting me, depending on which of us was more like economically reasonable or like sustainable. And in a purely independent world, there would never be anybody who would be able to mediate the situation other than you and me. And since we're so close to the situation, I believe that it'd be much more likely for us to escalate and eventually, like, I guess if businesses are the analog, eventually it would be companies, and those companies are the analog for countries because business, city, state come from the individual, bigger version country. There's nobody who could check us back. We would be able to do to each other whatever we thought. And if there's no outside community to say, like, you two bickering and fighting could cause a fire which would destroy the entire neighborhood, not just your own houses, then, like, there could be warring factions. Like, it's essentially a state of nature in which might makes right. If there's no centralized authority that only acts as an unbiased mediator, then there is no unbiased mediator, and all we're left with is a bunch of rival factions struggling for control over what they perceive is their own individual freedoms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. See, I think that there's a Nietzsche quote in the genealogy of morals. I think I pronounced it right. Genealogy of
Yeah.
morals. It goes something along the lines of like the purpose of law is the last thing you consider in the implementation of I guess moral law. I'm really butchering this quote. I'm paraphrasing, but basically he's saying that the purpose of law is widely different than its utility because it's always manipulated by a power. It's always manipulated and mandated by a force stronger than it.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that would happen with the individual rights framework because as soon as like you said, I feel like I'm fearful that it would turn into like a faction war. That's pretty much what I'm afraid of. Um, I would be interested to hear Eric's thoughts on this.
I think his response would be something like, at the moment where individuals start infringing upon others, it's no longer a negative rights framework, and they're no longer upholding his ideology. I think at least that's what I think he would say. Because if I truly believe that I cannot infringe upon your body in any way, shape, or form, I may be able to stay and undercut you as much as I want, but I can never actually forcibly extricate you from your business. So I guess his response would be something like, a faction war in a negative rights framework is a shouting match and nothing more.
What do you mean by shouting match?
Like, we express our negative rights as long as they don't infringe on the other person's negative rights. So I get to call you an asshole as long as I want, and you get to call me an asshole as long as you want, as long as I don't hit you and you don't hit me.
I see.
And like, I think that eventually that would lead to a really, really problematic world, because if everybody's on those kinds of terms, then yeah, I'm not going to fight you, but I have no incentive to do business with you. And like, even if it doesn't devolve into faction wars, like, we're probably going to harm a lot of society, because society is built off of being like, I can trade my shoes for your fish, and you can trade your fish for like his carpentry or her carpentry, whatever, their carpentry. Sorry about that. Their carpentry, and
I
that's
don't know why
how
you used it like a
gendered language. Yeah, I don't like
Yeah.
using gendered language. If I used it at any point subconsciously, I apologize. Continuing.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Not to derail it, but
No, go for it.
but to totally derail it. So what? How does the gender neutral terms come into? Is this sort of how, like you were saying, where it's like it would be problematic when we don't have some like thought police?
Yeah, like, okay, so as far as me liking gender neutral terminology, I guess it's because I don't think that oppression of any single form is exclusive or more important than any other form of oppression. Like, I think that, for example, like, the best way I can codify it is, I have several friends who subscribe to the Black Lives Matter movement. And while I don't believe that Black lives don't matter, I don't like the title Black Lives Matter. And I'm not trying to co-opt it as a member of the status quo. I'm not trying to say that their position is wrong. I don't have access to the black white binary of race. I'm brown.
I think there is. I think there's some truth to the to I guess the perceived racism and like in black killings by cops.
Mhm.
I think there is some truth there. If I'm being
Honest.
yeah, if I'm being honest, but it's only because like I really don't know. Like I really don't know all the information. You know, I can't really go into the subjective mind of cops and see. But outside of that, I think some of the other things that Black Lives Matter advocates for, uh, like for example, some universities they want like black killing spaces, you know, and to me that just seems like segregation. Like it seems like the same.
Self-imposed segregation.
The Ku Klux Klan and the Black Lives Matter don't speak a lot of the same language, but it seems like the realities they want aren't that much different. You know.
Yeah, and that's why I don't like the idea of the name Black Lives Matter. I don't negate that the oppression you feel is real. Like I just think that as a like as a member of my community, an oppressed person, I should not feel alien or excluded. Like, why is it that when Black Lives Matter talks about police brutality, like I'm not saying they have to address every single instance
I
because
think
there's a lot of it.
I think Eric brings up a good point when he talks about like the police brutality thing, where it's like if you're taking on race, it doesn't have the right impacts, right? It shouldn't matter what someone's skin color is if they get shot unarmed and they get shot like 11 times unarmed, then it just seems it's unjust, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely unjust.
I mean the police force, I would imagine, their purpose is to protect and serve, not gun people down based on perceived evidence at the time. But I don't know. Maybe there were some instances where things where they felt justified, and I really don't know.
I think you touched on a really important issue, like I personally believe the origin of police brutality in the United States is the perception that the job of the policeman is not to protect and serve, like you said, but rather to fight crime.
You think people who have served in the military, like the Army and Marines, you think they should be allowed to serve as a police force?
Yeah. If once again, like no monolithic interpretations. I think that I would have to examine every case and determine for myself whether or not I believed they were able to go into the police force, because there are individuals within the military who say, you know what, that's a stupid fucking order, and will get court-martialed because they know it's a stupid fucking order. And I would definitely say, you're somebody I want as a police officer. You're brave enough to run toward the bullets, not away from the bullets. You're brave enough to...
Yeah, but they're also taught to, and
Yeah.
anytime like something happens, So it's like, you think that could possibly... The reason I'm reading this up is because there was this topic was discussed in one of my classes a while back, one of my courses. So I just want to hear your thoughts on it. Like I really don't know.
Okay, so I guess
I could see the argument, that because police officer or because people who serve in the military are trained to like sort of be prepared and like if anything jumps, like be ready to shoot, and like the police officers should, I guess like I
not
don't
be
know.
prepared to shoot.
I mean, I don't want to. Yeah, I was about to say it, but then it's like I don't know if they should not be prepared to shoot. More like not be prepared to kill.
Yeah,
I
like
think that's the best way to put it.
one of the things that I think is so like it never gets brought up for some reason, because I guess nobody wants to like. I'm not in any way trying to speak ill of the dead, but let's give some of these individuals, these police brutality people who commit police brutality, police officers who harm individuals, 1 second to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, you did legitimately fear for your life. What stopped you from putting a bullet in their leg? If they had a knife, if they were coming at you with their fists, like the Trayvon Martin incident, I believe that he was wrong, not because he shot Trayvon Martin, but because of where and why he shot Trayvon Martin. If he was truly aiming to incapacitate an attacker, there are far more effective ways than like several shots to the chest. Like that's not an intention to incapacitate.
I think that the thing about the whole Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman case, I don't agree that he should have followed.
Oh yeah,
I think everyone kind of agrees on that.
Yeah, because he was a civilian trying to be a police officer. Like that's a stupid decision. First of all,
the thing of whatever happened between then when the first like engagement happened and then Trayvon got shot. Obviously, they must have gotten to some sort of brawl. And Zimmerman, he probably like brawls are pretty spontaneous. Like or like once you get into it, you really don't. It's kind of like missing.
Yeah.
There are not very many brawls that are like coordinated, but I don't know. I don't know if anyone really knows what happened between the time when he's following him and then they're fighting. It's hard to gauge whether or not who instigated what, if it was justifiable for him to shoot him. I I don't think you should have followed him.
Yeah.
But I really don't know what could have caused like the whatever. They must have had some argument. They couldn't have just like he couldn't have walked it behind Trayvon, like bashed him in the head, and he turns around and just starts brawling.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. What the answer? Where the answers lie. Uh,
I don't think.
let's say he instigated it, right? Let's say he's because he followed him and it led to it ultimately. Um, what if we are to recognize that as like a criminal behavior? What should be the punishment for it?
See, like for me, as far as I view criminal punishment, I don't think I'm like, well, at least I don't think that culpability should be completely irrelevant. However, I don't think it should be the most important factor. I think that likelihood of recidivism is also incredibly important.
I
Like,
mean,
like for the instance of Zimmerman, my way of determining what his punishment should be would be to understand whether or not, like, because I know he shot him. Like, there's no question that he is
yeah,
the individual who did it. Like, the
exactly.
culpability is there. Like, that is not in question. What I think is the problem is that we ignore the likelihood of recidivism. Like, what's the chances that this individual will undertake these same courses of action in the future? Um, while I can't, like, even in every instance, like, even that interpretation becomes folly because there are some individuals who literally don't give a fuck and will do whatever they can to hurt whoever they can. Like, and I don't mean in like the masochistic, like the sadist way. I mean in the like hedonistic lust killer kind of way, where I don't necessarily want to kill you, but I want to have sex with your guts. So unfortunately for you, that's probably going to mean you're going to die. Like that's super bad.
That's super bad.
Yeah, and like that instance, I don't think that like anybody would dispute that the likelihood of recidivism is probably super damn high because they're not doing this
They like eating guts.
exactly like if they like eating
Perhaps
guts.
some compromise. Perhaps he should get into hunting.
Oh well,
Perhaps
I
there's some
actually like hunting.
compromise.
Well, I don't think my interpretation of hunting is everybody else's. Like for me, what defines hunting would be like, let's say you want to hunt a bear, a grizzly bear. I don't think shooting a bear from 500 feet away with a rifle designed to kill large animals is hunting. I think that is a cowardly murder of an innocent creature. If you want to hunt something, you have to give it the damnedest opportunity to hunt you back.
Okay, well, here's the thing about like if the only argument I can see for why there should be individual rights is, and I'll tie this back to what you said. You'll see in a second. Is that because we we are agents of moral understanding, and we have a reason. We have a capacity for reason and understanding. We're metacognitive of that, right? We're metacognitive of that. We are aware of those processes, and because we can't escape those or taken away willfully, there has to be an external force, and we have to conclude that we must own them. And because of that, you can presume that other humans around you have that same metacognition. So that's what gives the self-property. Now, if an animal is environmentally aware, we know they're environmentally aware, but if they're not metacognitive, is it still just to view them as ownership over their own body? Therefore, it would be morally unjust for us to transgress on that.
Honestly, yeah, because I have several family members who are within like the animal fields. Like I have one who's a dedicated marine biologist, one who's a veterinarian at the like industrial farming level. Well, not here, but still. So like when I think of animals, and I've seen animals both in the wild and animals in captivity, and I think they are metacognizant because animals in captivity are, I would argue depressed because like some of the trademarks of depression in humans are lack of interest.
I can't reason like that's how I reason what I just explained, like the self-harm thing is how I reason morality with animals usually. But there's something intuitive with me that I feel it's wrong to have a caged animal. I feel it's wrong to like kill dogs, for example. I feel
Yeah.
for no reason. You know, like, well, I guess
Just like with people.
if the reason, it depends on the reason, right? Like if a dog jumps at you and is like
Well,
mauling you, then perhaps it's justifiable. But
it's an infringement on your negative rights.
yeah, it's infringement on your negative rights.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
It's but yeah, there's something intuitive to me that I feel is wrong to cage animals and that's where I really don't know how to rationalize that, you know.
Well, like, as far as what I meant by like my hunting being like take a hatchet or like a knife and go like in a state of nature, you try to take it down before it takes you down. Like I feel like that respects the like because what I believe of the hunter mentality is you're trying to prove your capability to not only stay away from the predator or creature which you are trying to take down, but also the finesse required to determine when to fight your battles. And I feel like if you deny that opportunity to the other player, the animal which you're the game, it's no longer sport. It's shooting fish in a barrel, and that's not a sport. That is like cause and effect. Um, if it's truly a sport, there has to be equal playing fields, equal ground. Like it's not a sport in like football would not be a sport if the 50-yard line for me was 10 yards away from your touchdown goal or your where I score a touchdown, and the 50-yard line for you was the same exact spot, 10 yards away from your own field zone, and that's not cool. That's not a sport. That's not anything to brag about. So if you want to believe that this is a symbol of your ability to not only escape what you're trying to kill, but to kill it before it kills you, it should at least have the opportunity to be able to fight back. Like, I mean, that's the only way I could see a justification for hunting. Oh well, no, there's two. The other instance would be kind of as a test of an individual's humanity, because I believe that I guess a thought experiment would be uh, two individuals, one child, one adult, go into the forest to hunt a deer. They find a deer, and the child is given the rifle. It then is apparent that the deer is not alone. The deer is there with its child. I feel that if that child can shoot the parent deer in the presence of the child deer, that speaks volumes of that person's humanity or lack thereof humanity. Because like I feel that children inherently are more like you remember how you said like you don't think it's okay to cage animals? Like I think children are more like that than adults are. Because children very often don't think of the worst case scenario. They think only of what they know. And what they know at that moment is this is a peaceful creature enjoying its dinner with another peaceful creature who happens to be its child.
Or they see it as I'm having a fun bonding with my dad. Maybe they prefer that over that.
Well, in that instance, then I would think that if they are willing to believe that their pleasure is worth the life of another creature, that could be scary because that and like not every instance like I understand like see like the monolithics again it would have to be individually determined because I do believe that there would be individuals who never thought that far into it like they're literally just a kid with their parent and they know the parent is like I in my experiment the parent knows what's going on but the child does not in this instance I feel like the parent doesn't think this far ahead either and
I think a nice middle ground. I think we have an interesting middle ground. I don't know if I would say not interesting middle ground where we have like laws in place where it's like, okay, we realize you guys want to kill animals, so we've messed around over here, got some information, and we found out that you can kill this many deer and not fuck with the ecosystem. I think that's like
that's a good middle ground.
It is an interesting middle ground. Where I really don't know where what values I personally view on killing animals, like hunting and whatnot. I feel like I'm sort of biased because I grew up around a family that does that. I mean, my dad has like.
Oh, I've hunted too, and it like, and specifically like the reason that even I don't fall under my paradigm of hunting is because when I hunted, I was pretty young, and I wasn't hunting a game animal that could kill me back. I was hunting iguanas. So
You hunted iguanas?
yeah, well, like,
That's crazy.
all right. So don't think of like iguanas at the pet store. I mean like 6 to 7 foot to sometimes 8 foot long,
Basically
like
dinosaurs.
tiny dinosaurs. Yes,
Yeah.
like 60 to 70 pounds of
Can
pissed
can
off
we
muscle.
agree that it is just to kill any crocodile? Why would anyone want that vain creature to fucking exist?
Well,
those things are creepy.
see, like that's an instance where I would be like, okay, that's hunting. You go into a river with a fucking scuba mask and a knife, and you're just like, I know there's one fucking croc in here who I don't know took my brother's arm.
I think we should pass laws to where it's required. It's a coming of age ritual where
Mhm.
where when you reach 18, you got to go out into the swamps with a knife. You got body armor. And you get like a scuba diving mask,
Uh-huh.
and you have to go and you hunt a crocodile.
Yeah, like, see, like that's something I could get behind because, like, one of the things that I think is kind of important, which not everybody agrees with me, and a lot of people would probably call me sociopathic for, is I think that everybody within their lifetime has to come to grips with the idea that at times, maybe not during your lifetime, but it's pretty obvious from the course of history that sometimes people need to be stopped. And I feel that all of us must have the moral agency to be able to understand that.
Now, when a crocodile comes into the city limits,
Mhm.
no good can be had from that.
Yeah, and to be able to apply,
put down,
and to be able to apply that to when a human being is a crocodile. Because I don't believe all humans are people. I believe that individuals who have knowingly and without remorse.
I think the best way to frame that, in my opinion, is like saying we might have innate moral laws or duties like the Native Rights Framework, but it's best to have a system of government in place to actualize those values. And if you commit violence against someone else or compromise on those values within the society, then you give up the right for them to actualize those values for you. Mm-hmm. And so you no longer are recognized. You no
That's
longer
exactly
have
what I'm saying. Yeah,
yeah.
Because like I could never, in good conscience, look at somebody like I don't know, Joseph Goebbels with the same like reverence that I would look at, for example, Zach here. Like when I look at Zach, I don't see an object.
An evil white male.
Not even that. Like I don't even. Like my interpretation of you right now is Zach, somebody who I met with a slight Southern draw. That's about it. Like
slight Southern draw.
You're a good person. Like that's as far as I know. Like there's nothing that you've shown me that like leads me to believe that you aren't a human being. But if I were to look at somebody like Joseph Goebbels, knowing them and what they've done,
who are the Goebbels now?
Joseph Goebbels was the propaganda minister under Adolf Hitler during the Third Reich, and he was largely responsible for the institution of the final solution, mainly the Nazi death camps. Like, I don't think I could look at that individual and say, yeah, you totally have negative rights. Fuck that. You've taken too much from humanity. You no longer.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be he would no longer have his negative rights under your cultural framework?
Exactly.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
That's my problem with like cultural relativism. Is like if you look at like mass genocide in history, and because like a culture perceives it as justifiable at the time. I don't. I feel like if you say morality is relative to culture, which is descriptively true, it's descriptively true. That legitimizes that action as morally justifiable
within the culture.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that I kind of want to tie that back in with like my idea of a community or a communitarian society kind of being formed based on like democratic values. I think like having a monolithic society with set codified moral laws allows you to look at other societies as publicly unjust. So I would what's the word? Parse public enemy from private enemy. Mm-hmm. So private enemy would be like, say we live in this hypothetical society and you like, I don't know, kill my dog or something. You cage my dog. Mm-hmm. Like that would be like unjust. That would be like you'd be my private enemy. You'd be my enemy in my private sphere. But a public enemy would be like how I think we should view dealing with with foreign influences. So if you run into another society that has like it's okay for dogs to be caged, like it's okay to take your friend's dog and cage them, because I don't know they for some reason that's our culture.
I think an interesting parallel to that would be kind of like cultures that are endorse child marriage. Like
Yeah, that is an actually parallel.
because if we believe that individuals have agency to decide their lives for them, and they must be informed to be able to do this, otherwise they're not actually deciding, then the idea of child marriage is an affront to that because they don't have a developed enough worldview to have their own independent moral agency with which to decide to marry you. Like, it's the same logic for why bestiality is illegal in the United States, and I don't believe that that's okay either, because we can never determine whether or not an animal is giving informed consent. Not to compare bestiality and child marriage. Children are not animals. They're just...
We're all animals.
That too. We're all animals.
I would say like the public enemy thing. I feel like enemy sounds like inherently like enemy sounds like bad. Like I don't. I think like maybe foe would be like the proper word for it, or something like a public foe or a public opponent would be like an outside culture with different perspectives, but not necessarily your private enemy. Just like a different way, a different culture. And I think that the best way to view it is like you can trade with the culture and everything and interact with it.
But you shouldn't allow that part of their
culture.
culture.
Like if someone from their culture came into your society, they should assimilate to your culture, and vice versa. I think that would be the solution toward cultural.
See, like I like that solution, but one of the things that would scare the shit out of me would be an instance of like referring back to the child marriage thing. Like the way I think that it parallels your dog scenario is, here it's not okay for me to marry somebody's underage daughter. Like, and I don't mean underage as in like 17 or 16 or even fucking 14. I mean like 7 and 8 and shit, like prepubescent child. In other countries, it's completely okay to do that. Like, I feel like that is something we should actively combat. Like, I don't think of that as a form of culture.
Should we go into their society and try to like fuck up shit because of that? Maybe.
I don't see. I honestly think maybe.
That's my that's my.
Because like that's the essence of my communitarian purpose. Like if I truly am a communitarian, then I have to take it upon myself to say if this country as an individual group.
Well, let me ask you this then: if you go into that culture, then let's say let's hypothetical here. So you have your society and you see that morally unjust, and let's say you're the leader of society. Let's say you're some kind of like monarchist society, right? And you say we're going to go in and we're going to. This is like morally unjust. This is inconceivable. I can't believe they have this. We're going to go in and we're going to improve on it. So you go in, you conquer them. You kill other men and breed with their women, and kill all the male children.
Genghis Khan.
And you assimilate them into your society. Well, haven't you just like
committed genocide?
Well, that too, but haven't you like isn't that like being a monolithic culture?
Exactly. Like even communitarianism, like there is no catch-all approach. Thus, communitarianism, the idea that there will always be the overarching community to benefit the individual, can never be applied in every instance. Because like this would be my paradigm of war under a communitarian framework. It would just be like you go to individuals and you say X country or X group of people is doing Y thing. And if they all agree that Y thing is sufficiently fucked up, I'm pretty sure it'd be easy to get everybody to rally together and try to go stop it. At least until the impacts were so severe that you were either completely unable to continue your moral agency in that effort, like you have to go to sanctions instead of warfare because you're running out of soldiers, or you abandon your moral agency. Because, like, I don't think you can both have your moral agency and ignore it. Like,
this is related. I kind of the negative rights framework. There's some inconsistencies I feel like I wouldn't be okay with if it was applied in society, and I want to mention one of them, and then you could talk for like 30 seconds while I go take a piss. But
okay.
Under like, I feel like that means if there's an individual rights framework, negative rights framework throughout a society, so everyone owns their own body, what is stopping like a 14-year-old girl from going and like fucking like a 80-year-old man? You know,
Nothing.
Yeah.
Individual freedoms trump personal, or
And it's-
individual freedom trumps the community good.
And it's like how much does it extend to like young, like at what age should someone I know because of the negative rights framework, Eric is pro-life because of that.
Mhm.
So he has the idea that at conception, that's when an individual gains control of their body.
Mhm.
But I feel like that's problematic because then it says like, well, what if a 7-year-old girl is like convinced by like a creepy old man that it's okay, you know, to penetrate her or something.
Mhm.
She's manipulating into doing that. Like, is it still logically consistent, or not logically consistent? But is it still like okay? You know. Hello.
Well, like
Hello,
along
Zachary.
those lines, I guess my response would be at that point, whose rights are more important, the rights of the mother or the rights of the child?
My rights.
Yes.
My rights are always
okay.
most important.
So tell me if you find this joke offensive. We were talking about dogs and how most people have an inherent, like, at least kindness or, like, not outright hostility to dogs. Like, most people don't see a puppy and are like, I'm going to go stomp it into the ground. And he talked about how it's like, well, if it's biting you and it's, like, sufficiently large, most people would agree that, like, you can take action against the dog for biting you. And I was like, or as Eric would say, that dog is infringing upon your negative rights.
It is, but the thing is, I would say it depends if you infringe on the dog's negative rights first. Somebody tries to pet my dog, and my dog bites at the person, and my dog's making clear they don't want the person to come pet her, then I think the person's in the wrong. The person gets for exactly what the person deserves.
See, why is it, like, is this the ENTP thing? Because when I said that, I was like, or Eric could just be like, if that person was fucking with the dog, I think they had it coming. They
Right.
put the
That's
dog's
exactly
negative
what I
rights
did.
first.
If the dog ran up and bit them for no reason, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if the dog was just standing out there, all right, thanks. All right, let's go.
Let's cut off this talking with famous people.
Before you start, what gives the dog negative rights?
The dog doesn't really have negative rights, but I perceive it as.
Open this on the rack. How you doing?
Alright.
Oh,
But don't stop it yet.
you guys doing the bad stuff.
I perceive that the dog doesn't actually have negative rights, but that my negative rights extend to the dog.
Hey, Dad.
So the dog is your property, and I don't have the right to infringe upon your property?
It's either my property or it's an independent entity that has more rights than a squirrel.
So I think that the individual rights would have to come from metacognition, right? I think that's the only.
That's why I'm saying no. It doesn't technically have rights. I agree. It doesn't.
But most likely it's going to be extension of someone who does have it.
But I would make the argument anyway. Regardless of whether I can make it very strongly or be consistent about it. I would make the argument anyway. If somebody's fucking with my dog and my dog bites them, that it's that person's problem. And that I think is a fair argument to make because if somebody says, well, doesn't have any rights, then I can say, well, it's my property then, and he's fucking my property. If I have an alarm on my car and it hurts his ears because he's trying to break into my car,
It's his own fault.
Yeah.
Where's Justin?
Hey, Dad.
All right, we gotta go.
Cut this talking with famous people.
Thanks for us
Oh,
talking
we
with
gotta go
famous
get
people.
Justin.
Bye.
Why didn't you just get Justin when you were there?